we're going to talk in this part about graduate programs, and we're going to talk both about the timeline and requirements and a little bit about the different types of programs, both academic and professional graduate programs. So first of all, looking at the timeline for graduate school, this is just a rule of thumb. All programs do have different admissions timelines, and we'll talk specifically about some of the programs that most of our students apply to, but generally speaking, this is kind of a good guideline just to give you what's the priority for each of the 4 years that you're here. So in the first year, you're focused on grades, both fall, spring, and summer. You're focused on getting coursework done and making sure that your grades in those prerequisite courses are good. And we'll look closer at GPA in just a few minutes also. Year 2, you're still focusing on grades because, as we remember, most of those sciences are in that lower half. So in the second year, you're still focused on getting good grades, lots of A's, but you're starting to put your feelers out for networks, both academically, maybe some faculty that you might be interested in, and also professionally. And this way you can start thinking about year 3, where you'll acquire a lot of experience. You'll have to acquire anywhere from 30 to 1,000 observation hours, which we'll talk about. Most of us that are applying to physical therapy or occupational programs anywhere in the zone of 80 to 150, so not that many, but depending on the program and how many hours they require, we'll kind of gauge better when you start these hours. For PT students, I generally say I'd start planning in about year 2 for where you're going to do it, and then nail those hours down in the summer and the first semester of year 3. Then you're applying in year 4. So when you start your fall semester, a lot of programs do actually take applications in fall, and you'll be admitted the following spring for a summer start. And some programs don't actually take applications, still spring traditional, and then you would start the following fall. So different ways to do it. Again, it's very important to look into school to school. Some also do not require that students take the GRE, but if it is required, then you're going to want to do that the summer before. So summer in between your junior and senior year. So let's talk a little bit about the requirements. We're going to talk about each of these separately. Each of these are important components of an applicant's package. So the first and most heavily evaluated portion of your application to graduate school is the coursework. So you have to have a bachelor's degree, and it really can be in anything as long as you've met the prerequisite course requirements, but most programs do require that you have at least a 3.0 GPA to apply. There are some programs that are an exception to that, like chiropractics programs. I've even seen occupational therapy programs that will take down to a 2.8, but as a rule of thumb, you're shooting for that 3.0 overall bachelor's degree grade point average. Then within that, and even the most important part out of the total GPA, the more important part of the GPA is the prerequisite science GPA, or the prerequisite course GPA, I should say. And depending on the type of program, that's anywhere from 20 to 50 units. And again, they're looking for C or 3.0 or better averages in those prerequisite courses, and at least a C or better grade in every course. Now, you're not really going to read the C or better grade on every course on websites. This is just from talking with and seeing the admissions process and talking with the admissions committee over the years. They just, C's and D's obviously stand out. So even if it doesn't say that if you have a 3.2 and a couple D's, they're going to see them. And it's usually an easy way to weed students out because it is very competitive. Speaking of competitive, these are just examples of the types of students that are up against you. This would be a student that started here as a freshman, but they really do acquire straight A's in almost all of the prerequisite courses. Same with transfer students. And this is a good time to bring up that, community colleges are usually fine to take the coursework, especially in the lower division areas, because as you can see from this excellent transcript, this student took 2 years at a community college. A lot of those sciences and prereq courses were done there, and they're still admitted to PT school because of their excellent performance. So don't frown too heavily on community college courses. There are some medical programs that are a little bit finickier about it, but I would talk to HPAO about that. And we're going to introduce HPAO in a minute, so don't worry about jotting that down. The prerequisite coursework, we don't have to talk exhaustively about this, but you can just see the differences between med school, and I didn't have time to add the physics in there, but there aren't technical requirements for physics for med school, but I have seen it recommended at a few places. However, it is required for physical therapy. They need a whole year. It's also required in 1 semester for athletic training, and so you guys can take a look at that. This is just a resource. Now, this is the little talk on prerequisite GPA. So it is very important, and I'm going to tell you a very important detail. You're graded on your application just like a project. So it's like a rubric where you're scored based on different sections: GRE, observation, letters, etc. The grade point average and the evaluation on your prerequisite coursework is over half of the total possible points for your scoring. So it's really important, and I hesitate to say at other PT schools, but at our PT school, it's kind of like the stack maker in terms of, the 3 7s and above, the 3 3s and below. Everyone else floats in between. The averages are like 3 5s. So this student doesn't have a terrible GPA. They have a qualifying applicant GPA, a 3.0, but you can see that one C grade in a really heavy 5-unit chem class is pulling them down significantly. And if they were to want to repair their GPA before they applied, they could take a intro chemistry class at a community college and earn an A grade and apply with that A grade so that they preserve that prereq GPA. Watch the difference if we change that C grade to an A. It's just one class repeated. It goes from a 3.1 to a 3.3 with just doing one class. And now you're evaluated, in a different light than students who are in that lower GPA zone, who have to, be excellent in other areas. So prerequisite GPA is important. The stronger your prereq GPA, the better your chances of not being so critically evaluated in the other areas. On the other hand, if you are hovering at like a 3.0, that you are evaluated on lots of other things that we're going to talk about, and which should make you happy. These are community college equivalents. So if you were interested in, again, retaking or salvaging a course, you would just apply to a CC and take one of the courses there. You do run into issues at some places where they say you already have credit in the class, but just act like a new student and don't upload all of your transcripts. Take the course over the summer. Use that grade to apply to graduate school. So again, some programs are no longer requiring standardized tests, but to my knowledge, all med programs are still requiring the MCAT as of now, and most DPT and MOT programs are still requiring the GRE, and so are regular master's and doctoral programs. Again, though, I think that you'll just have to look from school to school on that, because I hear a lot of different changing and conflicting news across semesters. But there are study tools. You can find classes that are offered. Some are even on campus, like SDSU College of Sciences hosts a GRE prep. USD hosts a USD prep once per year. And as a rule of thumb, again, back to the timeline, if you start studying for this like late spring, early summer, between your junior and senior year, you'll have plenty of time to take it and do a really good job on it before the deadline, the application deadline, which comes fall your senior year. So recommendation letters are really important. In fact, some members of the committee are pretty clear that these are their favorite things to thumb through when it comes to evaluating candidates that are close academically and experience-wise. What these people have to say about you is kind of like the icing on the cake, so to speak. So you need at least 3 letters for most grad programs. Academic, at least one has to be from an academic instructor, a professor, a TA, someone that you were involved with research with, and one of them has to be a practitioner, preferably who works in a clinical setting, preferably one that you worked with in a clinical setting, but they will ask you on your recommender information, do you have your physical therapy license? When did you get it? What's your license number? So they really do investigate, who are actual licensed practitioners and who aren't. So one under the care of a practitioner, one from a person in academia, and then the third one can be from anybody who can testify to your skills and abilities, academic, non-academic, or really good family friend, or maybe they're a police officer, a priest, a nurse that's in your family, or someone in the health field. So anyone can help you with that third letter as long as it goes with the rest of your materials. When it comes to your recommenders, I think I give you some basic advice in your notes about like when to ask for these things. Let's see, yeah, it's in your notes. Things like how to go about asking for them and the timeline and telling them what to expect and having a nice little snapshot about yourself ready is a good idea, because it's difficult for me sometimes to get an email from students a couple semesters after we've had a lot of encounters. it's hard for me to remember what they did their projects on or what they got in the class, or then I always email back like, well, what have you been up to? So if you could, in the request, whether it's in person or by email, give them your highlights reel and whatever information that you have, along with your personal statement and resume. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just an initial draft of those materials so that they don't have to go back and forth with you. You want the letter that they write you to match those materials, so it's helpful for you to provide them up front. Otherwise, you're going to get something pretty generic. Also, when it comes to your recommender, make sure that they're able to evaluate not only your abilities to do stuff in a letter, because obviously people use sometimes templated and standard letters. So you also have to be evaluated on your assets, skills, and abilities in a quantitative fashion. You're literally getting ranked on your intellectual ability on a scale of 1 to 5, your analytical ability on a scale of 1 to 5, works well with others on a scale of 1 to 5. So clearly not everybody or not your recommender might not be able to evaluate you on all of these, and there is a little I don't know mark. I'm not, in a class, you're not necessarily sure of someone's teamwork abilities or their reaction to stress. So these are some of the things that are asked, and sometimes you will get an evaluator to say, I'm not sure, but you want to ask somebody who knows as many of these types of things about you as possible. If it's someone that doesn't know a lot about you, they're not going to be able to accurately give you 5s on this huge list of quantitative rankings. So you have to do your best to dig in and get to know people just a little bit. Let's see. Observation hours. So the number of hours requires varies. We'll talk about PT school in just a minute specifically, but the number varies, and the main rule is that it has to be under a licensed practitioner. So whatever field you're going into, athletic training, physical therapy, occupational therapy, PA school, it has to be under a licensed professional in that field. Also, in a lot of grad program, the little fine lines with this requirement, it also asks that you do a variety of settings. And this could mean, inpatient versus outpatient, or an outpatient orthopedic setting, and then an outpatient, cardiac rehab setting. Different settings, different types of things. And you can get creative with settings. I think students sometimes forget that they can also, brag about the fact that they worked in a publicly funded or a federal hospital, like a VA hospital, versus working in a smaller private hospital. Those are different settings too. You're essentially doing all of this to show your versatility and how much experience you have. So the more different types that you have, the more well-rounded and versatile you look. So you want to record the hours and the locations, and this is pretty informal. There's a form on our DPT website. I know this says 2018 and there's a current one, but it looks exactly the same. So I was like, whatever, I'm changing it. But you basically just fill out your name and then the site information, and then your supervisor just initials or signs it. You'll take a scan of that and upload it with your application. So pretty informal on those, and I don't think anyone actually calls around to verify that you did these hours or how many, anyone counts them. They're, again, looking for you to be able to express yourself because of this experience in your statements, which we're coming up on. So your personal materials include your resume and your statement letters. Now, a resume, we're going to talk more about the resume. Probably not more about your statement letters, but we're going to talk more about the resume and interviewing and creating a good cover letter. We're going to talk about that when we talk about custom career planning in part 4. But here I wanted to introduce it to you because all grad schools want a resume in the application package. And I know for sure from talking to admission committee members that this is one of the fastest ways to evaluate a candidate. Once they've got you in the piles, they know your GPA is above this because you're here. They've put you in piles based on, lots and lots of clinical inpatient experience, a very small amount research experience. So this is a really helpful way for them to go back, take a glance at your brand. And I've heard different things. People want to see different things stand out in resumes, but here at SDSU, the director and the admissions person is looking for your resume to show cohesion. So the experiences are related, but yet they're diverse. You don't have like 7 outpatient orthopedic clinics listed. You've got lots of things listed, but they go together, right? So you worked at a lower back pain clinic, and then you worked at an outpatient post-surgery facility for musculoskeletal issues. But the diversity has to be there, but with the cohesion. And the cohesion is an important concept, because that also, we want to see that cohesion through your recommendation letters, and we want to see that cohesion through your personal statements and your statements of intent. We're going to talk more about how to differentiate between your work experiences, educational experiences, what philanthropic experiences are. We'll talk about all of that in the next part, but I couldn't leave talking about grad school without the resume. Also, statement letters are an important thing in your graduate application package. There are lots of different types. There's sometimes a statement of a professional issue, or ethical statements, advocacy statements, personal statements, statement of intent. There's all kinds, but I generically call them statement letters because you'll get different prompts for different programs, and they'll have different meanings behind them. But all of these statements will require that you not only look inside, you find your brand and continuity within yourself, your niche, so to say, but they'll also require you to be well versed in the field. It's your chance to demonstrate that you have that experience, you know for sure, you've seen it, you can relate to it, and you can express it in this exact prompt that you're getting. So you want to express here your brand, and we'll talk more again in part 4 when we get to professions, about how to professionally position yourself, right? How to create your little brand or your niche. But I like this little clip from the Bee Movie.
Here we have our latest advancement, the krill.
Wow, what does that do?
Catches that little strand of honey that hangs after you pour it. Saves us millions.
I love that little clip. And as simple and short as that is, it really does get to the point that everyone in society has a role to play, but you're going to have this one little special, unique job that you do, this one little thing that no one else is doing. That's your niche, right? And so all of that has to come across in your statement letters, your positivity, your confidence, your niche, where you're going, what you're doing, why the school you're applying to is a good fit. It's a very robust and important piece of your application, but it has to be written very concisely and poignantly.
Here we have
So now we're going to move on. We've talked about requirements, but very generically and generally, those are your requirements to apply. But there's also different program types, and we're going to talk about academic types, professional types. And just know too that many programs combine both. For instance, like our master's in athletic training, you're getting a master's degree and you're doing an accredited portion of the program that makes it a professional program. So sometimes those are joined concepts as well. Oops. So when you're deciding what program to apply to, you want to make sure and consider all of these things. The cost of it, the outcomes, like what's their pass rates, licensure rates, employment rates, the kind of curriculum they're offering, what the faculty is interested in, how the curriculum flows. Is it in clinics? Is it in classrooms? Is it in labs? Is it hands-on? Is it theory? Is it online? What are they doing? And what's the culture of the institution like? Do they value equity and diversion and inclusivity? Do they have ways for parents who work from home to get classes done? Do they have clubs and organizations that suit your style? So look into the culture, and obviously location is a big one here in San Diego. But whatever you do, do not list that you want to live in San Diego and that's why you're applying to San Diego State graduate programs, because they despise that, because everybody does want to live in San Diego. Well, not everybody, but it certainly shouldn't be a reason for choosing the program, even though technically it is. We want to look into those things and be sure that we like the city that the the program is offered, but we also don't use that as like an excuse of why we're picking a particular program. So academic doctorates are where you earn a PhD, and that stands for a doctorate in philosophy. These programs are typically 3 to 4 years. They do a lot of research, so students pair up with a mentor. They usually publish research studies, and they do some kind of a project at the end. Usually it's called a dissertation, and that's kind of their capstone course. Now, something you may not know is that you can apply for PhD programs straight from your bachelor's degree. You don't have to do the master's degree as a stepping stone. And I didn't know that as an undergraduate in the 90s. So I thought you had to get a master's first and then a PhD, but you don't. However, the master's is the mark of maturity. So if you didn't get into even a doctorate in physical therapy program or a PhD program, sometimes admissions people will suggest, and this is me asking, probably not students asking, but what can I do to improve my chances? and a master's degree is kind of a good idea. A lot of master's degrees you can get done in 3 to 4 semesters. The average is 2 to 3 years, but a lot of times I've seen them be able to be done in 18 months to 2 years. And so again, it just gives you that little boost to make you a stronger candidate in case you were just kind of an average candidate coming out of your undergraduate work. So they are not quite as research heavy. In fact, for a lot of programs, you can choose whether you want to do research, and also you can do writing instead of a thesis. There's a little more flexibility for a master's degree program. So professional level degrees, we're not going to talk about all of these in great detail. We're going to talk about physical therapy, athletic training in pretty good detail, and a little less in occupational therapy. And then I'm going to give you some resources for medical school, PA school, and teaching credential. So doctorate in physical therapy programs are 3 years. They're accredited by the APTA, and this means that when you finish that 3-year program, you can sit for your board exams and earn your state license, okay? So most of schools, I think it's literally out of every school in the nation, there's like 13 out of hundreds that don't use PT-CAS, and we're one of them, unfortunately. I'll talk about SDSU's program in a moment, but PT-CAS is the common central application system to apply to PT school. And there are so many resources on how to use PT-CAS on the APTA website. So when students will email me and say like, how do I enter my transcripts? I'm probably gonna send you to the ATPA guidelines and resources because they're crystal clear videos and resources about how to do this stuff. Better than I could articulate it to you, that's for sure. So standardized admission requirements for PT school, and we already talked about admission requirements, but same thing as we already talked about, except that they do require the GRE. There's definitely a lot of prerequisites, 45 to 49 units, and same as before, 3 recommendation letters. The program structure for physical therapy programs is typically 1 and 2. You're focused on a lot of classroom work with 1 significant internship. And then in the 3rd year, you're really doing mostly work in clinic, what's called didactic work instead of classroom work. This is the prerequisite sample sheet for, I should have actually brought that up back here. That's why I had that linked in. Here are the exact prerequisites for the San Diego State physical therapy program, which include the way that we would enter our classes. You can find this worksheet on the DPT website, and it obviously has the calculations built in for you, so that all you have to do is put in your grades in the classes and it'll give you the GPA. Now, again, looking at the differences those classes make with the exact number of units that's required to apply to PT school, this student has 2 C's in Chem 200 and Chem 201. And they didn't do bad. When you add all 47 units together, they still ended up with an over 3.0 GPA. They have a 3.27 GPA. But just retaking those 2 chem classes over a summer or maybe 2 summers back to back, they can raise their GPA to a 3.7. I mean, that is a completely different looking candidate just from those 2 courses. So again, I'm re-emphasizing to you that since there are only those few number of units, especially at San Diego State, because we really do just evaluate you off of those 47 prereq units, they don't look at the total 120 or separate courses within that, except these. So with that few number of units, you really want that to look good, and it's achievable. Like, you can make that look good. You just retake those courses at community colleges, because you can't redo them if you get a C or better here, but you apply with those grades from there. Standard classroom curriculum for PT programs. I'm not going to go through all of these. I just kind of wanted to highlight for you where the major emphases are. Clinical anatomy, muscular therapeutics, and cardiopulm. And this isn't for every program. This is a standard set of curriculum, just like we talked about with undergraduate degrees. Different schools will really pull out and emphasize different things. In fact, we had a faculty when our PT program started in 2015. He was more into the neurophysiologic stuff. He tested virtual reality. And so we had more units in that area then. But now most of the units that we have dedicated are to these types of therapeutics. So the DPT program, specifically at SDSU, collected some information here that just distinguishes it a little bit from the general talk on physical therapy school. It's about $90,000 total for the 3 years, and that's in-state tuition. It's a little higher out of state. I put here the performance averages, but again, these are averages. Students with higher GPAs and lower GPAs get in, but a 3.7 is the average incoming prereq GPA. I also put for you the GRE scores that are required, and the GRE averages. So 154 is the average score for verbal and quantitative, believe it or not, and 4.4 was the average incoming writing score. 4.0 is the minimum writing score to apply. Interfolio opens in October, so this is going to be fall your senior year, and it's going to be due the first week of December. So you have a pretty light schedule planned during that fall, and I did that on the map on purpose so that you're not inundated with coursework, but you'll want to make sure to have a lot of that already, the wheels in motion during summer. You've already requested letters, you already have most of your observation hours done, you have the GRE either done or coming up very soon that fall, because it's due in December and there's no exceptions on the deadline, and you don't want to be in fall with coursework trying to do everything for your application. So have the wheels in motion over summer, but October they open. Put them in as soon as you can. They say they don't look before the deadline, but I know for a fact they kind of peak a little bit. Human curiosity. So applicants send recommenders. This is a brand new thing this year. It used to be an Interfolio or PTCast, which is the system that most schools use. It's the same. So you will ask a recommender very formally, but you'll basically tell them that the dossier for PTCast will reach out to them, and that they will, and then you'll submit your letter through some online portal. But now this year we've started to change that a little bit, and there actually are going to be forms that the applicant have to get to the recommender to fill out, and then the recommender will submit those forms. So there's 2 personal statements instead of 1 for our PT program, and there is nothing on contemporary issues. We only ask students to describe what being a physical therapist means, and then we also want to know about any challenges or hardships that have contributed to your personal growth as you've strove towards your career. Strove, is that a word? I think it's strived towards your career in physical therapy. We do also have a video that we do really put a lot of stock into because you can really get a sense of a person's energy and how they articulate themselves when they don't have hours to do so in writing. The video also reinforces a candidate's well-roundedness. So it's going to back up what you've said in your resume, it's backing up what you've talked about in your personal statements, and it's backed up what your recommenders have said about you. And the main contribution of the video to the evaluation is why you wanted to go to SDSU and how you're going to contribute to what we do at SDSU. And that's an important thing, because it used to just be that they looked at why I want to go to SDSU. I know what you do. This is why I want to go there. Here's what attracted me. But now they're asking for students, and this is a brand new criteria that they're looking at also. They want to know, based on your knowledge of what we do and why you want to come here, how are you going to contribute? So it gets a little bit deeper into the students' thought process about the pairing between them and us. There's only 30 spots out of 400 applications. They are very picky about who gets those 30 spots. We want the students that know us and that can contribute to the success of our program. This is just something that I found in my files. I don't know how current this is, but I thought it was just interesting to present that this does exist. It's an observation form to see a DPT class. It gives you like the steps to do that, and it even gives you some language that you can copy and paste. But it's something that I would recommend doing. I would visit campuses to feel culture. I would visit classrooms to feel curriculum and faculty. This is an important decision. You're gonna spend $100,000 on this potentially, and you should, do your due diligence to want to know that it's a good fit. So Masters in Athletic Training, another professional program, which is lovely because it's only 2 years, even though it has the master's component and the accreditation to take your board exams to be certified as an athletic trainer. It has 6 terms, but including full summers, both years. So technically it's 8 terms. It's credited by National Athletic Training Association. And just like physical therapy school, almost all the schools use a TCAS, which is the centralized application system, except us. We use a different one. We use Interfolio for athletic training as well. And I could go into why, but really it's just so that we don't have to review 1,000 applications, because PTCAS is you apply once and it sends it to everyone. So we're a little bit more specific. If you do our Interfolio application, you really wanted to apply to here, and that's why we do that. Standard admission requirements that we already talked about, except in addition, they also have to have CPR certification, and their hours have to be obviously under a ATC instead of a PT. The program at SDSU, one of the unique features is that it is accredited so that you can sit for your strength and conditioning certification. So it has that content built in. It also has content for corrective exercise specialist curriculum, which is another professional certification. So a lot of curriculum built in that helps students in different career avenues, even with the athletic training certification and master's. For the MSAT at SDSU, no 2 personal statements and no advocacy statements, but they are asking for 1 personal statement that lists professional goals. Actually, this does have a little bit about issues in the field. It says they want to know about your professional goals, reasons for selecting athletic training, and understanding of the challenges in the field. And so this is something you'd want to research, and this is something you should know from those observation hours. What are the challenges that athletic trainers face? I have a high school kid, and I can name one off the top of my head. It's parents. I mean, parents being skeptical of your decisions to send them for concussion testing. I mean, I've seen parents get a little nasty with them. So issues in the field, how about the fact that high schools aren't mandated to have athletic trainers? And so what are the profession challenges? And so they're asking you to have a lot in your personal statement. And then a 1 to 3 minute video for why you want to be a certified athletic trainer and why SDSU specifically. Just a quick little note on the prerequisite requirements. These are the prereqs that are listed for SDSU, and these are pretty general to most athletic training programs, but I put up here in red a couple little caveats. They'll also take Nutrition 313, and they'll also take ENS 322 for weight training. And then research methods, we have ENS 305 here, but they also take other introductory stats class. See, you'll apply with your intro stats. I don't see where that is up here. Oh, there it is. Intro stats, the stat 119 works, but recommended is a higher level, which you have, ENS 305. Let's see, just looking at the 6 semester format, you can see that you take clinical anatomy and prophylactic interventions, which is just preventative care in athletic training. And then I love how this is organized because you'll have a term on lower extremities, then you have a term on upper extremities, then you have an internship over the summer, then you do head and spine, and then you do all of the stuff like how to run facilities, how to be athletic trainer, how to be athletic director, leadership, management, all that good stuff. So it's a very nice flow, the way that they sequence the MSAT here at SDSU. Now, the last grad program we're going to talk in detail about is occupational therapy, but not as much detail because we don't have a program here. So the generic idea for occupational therapy, and we'll talk more about this in the professions area, but these guys are specializing in functional daily needs. So they're not rehabbing people back to normal. They're working with people that have, long-term, permanent, chronic things that they need help with functional skills. Now, one interesting thing, and this is great for you guys, but they are changing this just like they did for physical therapy in 2014. They're changing the requirements from a master's minimum to a doctoral minimum. So you're fine and you'll be grandfathered in if you have your master's in occupational therapy before 2027, which you should be very close to that. Actually, no, you won't. You won't. So we'll recontinue this conversation. You'll want to make sure that you're looking into DOT prerequisites because in 2027, you'll need to have that degree instead to get your license. Right now, there's only 3 doctorate in physical therapy programs in all of California. The San Jose State program is brand new, and it's the only one in the CSU system. And it's, again, in response to this change. The admission requirements are similar, only they have less observation hours, slightly lower GPA requirements, and way less science prerequisite coursework than PT and AT. They also have a class that's not required for a program, which is developmental psychology, which is here on SDSU. It's Psych 230. And they also require medical terminology, which we don't have yet at SDSU. There's one offered through extended studies, but you could also take this at, I think it's Mesa has one, Medi 110 maybe, it's online. So last 2 topics are doctorate in medicine program, and I'm just gonna leave this here for a second so you can screenshot it or do what you want. But if you visit the Health Professions Advising Office, this is the sheet that they give you. It lists all of the requirements that you have to have for applying to medical school. Now, if you look through here, you'll see that a lot of them are included on the kinesiology degree, but a few of the biologies and second level chems are not. So I would make an appointment and go visit with HPAL. They're very familiar with advising kinesiology students who are taking the courses on top. And then it would be a good idea to visit with undergraduate advising to see where to pepper those prerequisites in. So for example, HPAL tells you that you need organic Chem 232 and upper organic Chem 432 and Bio 365 biochem. maybe they don't know exactly where those fit best in your kinesiology program. So then you would go to advising and have them help you map those courses. Same thing for PA school. I would go to the Health Professions Advising Office to talk about PA school because they're better up to date with prerequisite changes or things schools are doing. Like, for instance, are they requiring the GRE? Do they take online courses during the COVID period? They keep in touch better with those requirements. But same as med school, you can see that you have almost all these classes. There's an additional bio class. And then if you're applying to a school that requires, like, for instance, OChem or genetics, then there are a couple extra prereqs to take in there because, you can't take the, for instance, Chem 432 without the 232. So you're able to take the classes in. And then one last thing is you'll notice the microbiology requirement. You can actually use your biology 211, and it's even better because it has a lab. So you do have most of the requirements for PA school with the kines degree. But again, visit HPAL, then go to undergrad advising. They'll pepper in any additional courses that you need into your course map. So thanks for listening, you guys. That's all I have. We'll talk more about the practice of chiropractics in part 4 professions and about becoming a teacher. I just didn't include those here for sake of time and for sake of a small proportion of our students pursue those avenues. So thanks for listening. Take care.